Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, things are going to get a little dark, a little disturbing, actually. We're looking into the story of George Hassell.
George Hassell.
Yeah, he was responsible for not one but two separate family annihilations in the early 20th century.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to guide us through this, we're using a few different sources. His Wikipedia page is kind of the main one, and then we've also got a couple of old newspaper articles from back in the day.
Right.
Um, Really, the question that I keep coming back to with this case is, could any of this have been prevented? Like, were there signs that people missed?
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to consider. I mean, as we go through all of this, it's not just about the brutality of what he did, but yeah, were there any missed opportunities to maybe intervene
Right.
earlier?
Exactly. So, to start, I guess, at the beginning, he was born in 1888 in Texas, youngest of seven kids.
Okay.
And even early on, there are some things that are kind of like, that's a little strange.
Yeah.
Like, he lost his brother, and then he ended up marrying his brother's widow, so his former sister-in-law.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's definitely that's not typical. It makes you think about like the family dynamics, right?
Yeah.
And like, were there some, I don't know, blurred lines maybe? Boundaries?
Yeah, yeah.
No.
And there are also these claims about his parents' deaths.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he suggested that his stepmother may have poisoned them, and he even admitted that he had thought about killing her.
Wow.
And on top of all that, he also served time for embezzlement.
Okay, so there's definitely a history there, even before we get to the really horrific stuff.
Right, and it's like troubled relationships, potential violence.
Yeah.
So the first family annihilation, it happened in 1917 in Whittier, California.
Okay.
And at this time, he was with his common-law wife, Marie Vogel was her name.
Right.
And they had three adopted children.
Wow. So these kids were adopted, brought into this home, thinking this is a safe, loving place, and
And they were 8, 2, and 1.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That just makes it even more heartbreaking.
It's just awful. And his explanation for all of this was that they had an argument about him wanting to join the army for World War I.
Was that really the motive, though? Or was that just something easy to say? You know what I mean? Like, was
Yeah.
there something much deeper going on? And this brings up that whole question, like, was this an impulse thing?
Yeah.
Or was it premeditated? Like, had this been building up for years?
Right. That's what we're trying to figure out here.
Yeah.
Okay, so now fast forward to 1926. He's back in Texas, and he's married to Susan Ferguson.
Okay.
And you might remember she's his former sister-in-law, the one who was married to his brother.
Right, right.
And things get even darker here. It comes out that he had actually raped and impregnated his stepdaughter, Maudie, who was also his niece.
Oh, God, this just adds like a whole other level of awfulness to it. Like, it's not just violence, but there's this this abuse of power.
Yeah.
This total disregard for anyone else
Yeah,
in his family.
absolutely. And then December 5th, 1926, everything boils over. They
Okay.
get into an argument, and he ends up murdering Susan with a ball-peen hammer.
God. And like the way he did it, it wasn't just to kill her. It's like this rage.
Yeah.
It's just hard to even comprehend that.
It is. And then it gets even worse. He goes from room to room,
Oh, no.
and he uses a straight razor and stockings to kill the children,
One by one.
one by one, youngest to oldest. I mean, can you imagine?
That's just chilling.
It's-
When you think about what those kids must have gone through.
It's just horrible. And it's what criminologists actually call family annihilation.
Right.
Like, it's this idea that the family unit needs to be completely eliminated. Like, it's this thing to get rid of.
And it often comes from like this feeling of failure or, the person feels inadequate. Like they want complete control, but it's all just so distorted.
And tragically, two of the older children, David and Maudie, they actually woke up while this was happening.
Oh, my God.
There was a struggle, and he ended up killing them with a shotgun and an axe.
So at that point, it's like this this chaotic, desperate situation.
Yeah.
Not as methodical as before. Like maybe he had a plan, but then it all just spiraled.
Right.
And it became even more brutal.
After he killed everyone in the house, he buried all the bodies in, like, this newly dug root cellar. But that's not even the end of the story.
Oh,
His oldest son, Alton, was away working the whole time, like had no idea what was going on back home.
so this is where it gets even more calculated.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a rage thing. Like he had actually planned for Alton to come back.
Yeah.
Set a trap for his own son.
It's awful.
Yeah.
And he waited for Alton to come home.
Wow.
They even, like, shared a meal together before Hassell killed him in his sleep. I mean, the deception.
It's like so disturbing to think about, like, having dinner with your dad
Right.
and you think everything's normal, and then
It's just, yeah, the betrayal.
it makes you question everything.
Yeah, it's like he was trying to keep up this appearance of, like, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Even though he'd done these horrible things.
Right.
And then, after all of that, he tries to cover his tracks. He has a yard sale to get rid of their stuff, tells everyone they're moving to Oklahoma.
Oh.
But then a wagon, like, collapses the makeshift grave.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost like a darkly funny thing.
Yeah.
But it also shows, like, no matter how much you plan, it's hard to hide something like this.
Right. The truth has a way of coming out.
Exactly.
And to top it off, he tries to kill himself, but he fails.
Of course.
And the authorities were already suspicious. So that pretty much sealed the deal.
Yeah.
They dug up the root cellar and found the bodies.
Oh, God. And suicide attempt, I mean, was that real? Or was that just to try and get sympathy?
Right.
It's hard to know what was going on in his head.
And then he confesses. And this is where it gets even more disturbing. He doesn't just confess to the murders in Texas. He admits to the California killings, too.
What?
Yeah. Takes him to where the bodies are, the whole thing.
So this wasn't just, like, a one-time thing.
Yeah.
It's like this pattern of just awful violence
Yeah.
over years and across states.
So here's this guy, wiped out 2 families. Like, what could even push someone to do something like that?
Right.
Well, during his trial for Alton's murder, they only tried him for one of the murders.
Okay.
A psychiatrist actually said he was sane, but they labeled him as a sociopath.
Oh, interesting. Well, back then, the term sociopath wasn't like an official diagnosis. It's more like antisocial personality disorder now.
Okay.
But, it was used to describe people who lack empathy. They don't care about social rules, and they're often manipulative.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, they end up doing criminal things.
And get this, he had apparently been thinking about murder since he was 17.
Oh.
So this wasn't, something that just came out of nowhere.
Right. It had been building for a long time.
Yeah, like this darkness just waiting for the right moment.
It makes you wonder, could anything have been done?
Yeah.
If these violent thoughts were there so early on, could therapy have helped?
Right.
It's tough to say,
Yeah.
but it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, were there any signs,
Mhm.
that people just didn't see or didn't understand? We've
Yeah.
talked about his relationships, the violence, his own words about thinking about murder when he's so young.
It's haunting, really,
Yeah.
because often the signs are there, but people just don't, they don't put them together,
Right.
or they don't understand them.
Yeah.
Like with Hassell, the embezzlement, the marriage to his sister-in-law,
Right.
stuff about his parents. Those could have all been red flags.
Yeah.
But, back then, mental health wasn't really understood the way it is now.
Right. It's like this reminder that even in families that seem normal, there can be these really dark things happening.
Absolutely.
So, what happened next?
Yeah.
Did they try to figure out what caused him to do all this?
Well, he was convicted and sentenced to death in Texas.
Okay.
That was pretty typical back then.
Yeah.
In the 20s for crimes like this.
Right.
But the trial didn't really go into the psychology of it all.
Mhm.
He was executed on February 10th, 1928 at Huntsville Unit.
So that was the end of his life, but obviously it doesn't change what he did to those families.
Of course not.
This is just a story that's, really stuck with me. The violence, the betrayal, it's just senseless.
Yeah.
So as we're wrapping up, what do you think are the big takeaways here?
Well, I think the George Hassell case really shows us just how dark things can get.
Yeah.
And that this sort of thing, family annihilation, it does happen, even if it's not common.
Right.
And we have to be more aware of the warning signs, even within families.
It's like, things aren't always what they seem. Even people we're close to can do awful things.
Yeah. We have to pay attention
Yeah.
to the red flags, abuse, anger, threats,
Right.
and get help if we need to.
This has been a really tough topic, but an important one.
Definitely.
So I think as we end this deep dive, it's important to consider, could any of this have been prevented?
Mm-hmm.
If we understood mental health better, if there were more resources, could those families still be alive?
It's a big question.
Yeah.
Not an easy one to answer.
But it's something we need to think about.
Absolutely.